What if one simple trick could turn a $600 bumper repair into an $800 payday without any extra equipment or setup time? Since 2012, my business has repaired thousands of bumpers and headlights just like this and generated over $14 million in revenue. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to prep and clear coat headlights at the same time you're doing bumper work so you can see how easy it is to maximize every single job and build a more profitable mobile auto body repair business. All right, guys, we're here at the customer's house today, and we've got a bumper blend on the driver's side front, and we actually have one over on the passenger side front as well. It's down lower. It's smaller than this one. So we're going to be doing these two bumper blends today. And the customer also wanted his headlights done. And so what I typically like to do is when I'm at a customer's house already, I try to get between $250 an hour is what I kind of value my time at. And so I kind of take away the drive time since I'm already here, and I'll deduct that, back that off of the price. So today we've got $700 job between the bumper blend and the headlights, and I'm probably going to be here at the most like 3 to 4 hours. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do, like always, is we're going to clean the entire area and surrounding areas with wax and grease remover so that the area is clean, free of any waxes and greases, free of any debris. And I'm going to clean the headlights really well as well, and any surrounding trim so that the tape and paper will stick as well, and you're not grinding stuff into the damaged area. Also, always apply wax and grease remover directly to the rag and not just spray it all over the panel. I just like to do a good initial wipe here before I start taping and papering everything up. All right, so since we've got headlights and bumpers to do, I'm going to go ahead and prep the headlights and the bumper at the same time. Just kind of makes everything go faster, more efficient. And since I've got damage right here, if you've got damage on just a wide open area, after you wax and grease remover, you can just go ahead and start sanding it down. But since I'm close to some trim and fender here, I'm going to go ahead and tape before I start buzzing into it because I don't want to accidentally hit the adjacent panels or trim. All right, so now I got everything taped off. The adjacent panels taped off so I don't hit them with my DA. I'm going to grab my DA, and I usually always like to start with 180 grit and get all the damage sanded out, and then I'll move to 320. We're not doing any fill on this. It's all just surface scuff. The customer just wants the black to go away, and they want it to be nice and red and shiny again. So that's what we're going to do for them. So 180, and then after I do 180, I'm going to 320 and then feather out all the edges with the 320. Hey, I just wanted to interrupt this video for a quick second. If you're watching me complete this repair and make hundreds of dollars in just a couple hours, and you're thinking, man, I wish I could do that, then this is for you. I created a complete training program called the Mobile Auto Body Accelerator that shows you exactly how to learn these repair skills, how to get customers, and how to build a six-figure mobile paint business from scratch. There really is nothing else like it. Just scan the QR code on the screen if you're watching on TV, or you can click the link down in the description below. And now let's get back to the video. All right, so I have sanded all the damage out with 180, and I try to keep my sander, you know, as flat as possible against the panel so I'm not creating any grooves in the panel. And then I try to get the edges as best as I can with 180, and I'm barely using any pressure when I do that. I'm literally just barely touching the panel just to get those edges feathered out. And then I further refine all the sand scratches, the 180 sand scratches, with 320. And then I'll do that same thing where I'll really feather edge out all the edges with the 320. So always trying to remove my 180 grit sand scratches with the 320. And then because I'm exposing bare plastic, I'm going to apply adhesion promoter before I primer. So that's what we're doing now. All right, guys. So I've gone ahead and used the DA with the 320 grit, and I've feather edged out all these edges. I usually like to take my 320 off and just put it on a soft block so I can contour the edges. And I like to go after the edges further by hand. And what you want is what you see here, where you've got like plastic substrate, and then you've got primer, and then you've got base coat, and see how it really feathers out smooth. So what you don't want to see is any sharp edges. If you see any sharp edges, like right here, that's a little too sharp. Okay, so I need to feather edge that out. Otherwise, you'll see what's called mapping. Once you put your primer does a fairly decent job of hiding it, but to be honest with you, you can never really hide bad feather edging. You'll see what's called mapping. So if you look at a globe, you'll notice all the like little ridges and things on a globe. That's what you'll see if you don't feather out all these edges, and you do not want that. So just take the time to feather all these edges out. We're almost close. This is a 2-for-1 deal today. So because I'm doing the headlights, I'm probably going to go ahead and tackle the headlights with just my 3M sanding sponge, which is about the equivalent of 600 grit. And I'm just going to do it by hand. I'm just going to 600 grit this, and then move on to 1,000 grit, and then move on to 1,500 grit. So that's kind of like a preview of the headlights. But because I'm doing these at the same time, I'm going to probably just 600 grit this, and then I'll tape it up and get the painting and everything done of the bumper. And then that way I can remove the paper when I go to clear, and I'm just going to clear the headlights and the bumper at the same time. So 2-for-1. All right, I've got everything feather edged out. And so I'm going to grab my sanding sponge now to scuff up the entire bumper where it's going to be receiving base coat and clear coat. Before I do that, I'm just going to blow off all the sanding dust so I don't clog this up. And then I'm going to scuff the area, and then I'll be ready for my adhesion promoter, primer, base coat, and clear. All right, I've gone ahead and scuffed the entire area. I didn't mention this at the start of the video, but since we're doing two bumper blends and blending out the paint, I'm just going to clear coat the entire bumper. There's no sense to put two blend lines in the middle of a bumper. So I'm just going to clear the entire thing. So I'm going to go ahead and blow this off. And then because, again, I've got exposed plastic, I'm going to use some adhesion promoter and then prime, and then we'll be ready for base coat and clear coat. All right, I've used wax and grease remover again and gotten all the sanding dust and everything off. So I've got exposed plastic. I'm going to go ahead and apply the adhesion promoter real quick before I start the primer process. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start tackling this headlight before I get into primering all that and obviously base coat. So I need to go ahead and get these prepped to get to the clear coat stage. So like I said earlier, I'm going to start off with my sanding sponge and some water. This is like the equivalent of 600 grit. If the headlights are just milky like this and faded or yellowed, I always start with like 600. You don't need to go crazy. I see guys on the internet starting with like crazy grits and stepping up like 100 grit increments. It's like 29 steps. It's like way too long. You don't need to do all that. I've done hundreds of these things. Just 600. I go to 1,000, and then I'll typically do 1,500 before I clear coat. So what I'm going to do is I always wet sand. So I'm going to, especially when starting off with 600, I'm going to go ahead and, wet the sponge and spray some water on the headlight. And I'm just going to use some very light pressure and just let the sanding sponge do the work, and just keep working this until it looks nice and uniform. All right, so I've been wet sanding on this headlamp with my sanding sponge, which again is about 600 grit and some water. And I'm going to stop and just kind of see where I'm at. So I'm going to take some wax and grease remover and wipe all this sanding dust off of here and just kind of see where we're at. Looks pretty good. Probably hit it just a little bit more. I need to spend a little bit more time here. All right, I further refined the headlight with the 600 grit sanding sponge, and you can see now that's what you want to see. It just kind of is like a uniform frosted plastic. That's exactly what you want to see. And now that I've got that uniform look, I'm going to go ahead and refine the 600 to 800 grit sand scratches of that sanding sponge with 1500 grit wet sanding, and then I will clean it all off and get rid of all this paper, and then we'll start, we'll have to actually paper this up because I need to prime and do the base coat and everything of the bumper, and then we'll remove the tape and paper from the headlights. And then, like I said earlier, I'm just going to clear the headlights at the same time when I clear the bumper. All right, I've wet sanded the headlight with 1500 grit, and I'm going to go ahead and use some wax and grease remover and wipe off all the sanding sludge here and look to see what I got. I want to see a nice uniform, sort of just powdery white frost. And as long as I see that and don't see any like larger sand scratches, I'm good. So everything looks pretty good. So if you want, you can actually further refine this with 3000 grit, but typically I've found that the 1500 grit is a fine finish for applying your clear coat, because actually, I mean, when you clear a substrate like a plastic bumper or a panel, the sanding sponge is actually the final step before you clear. So 1500 grit, the clear coat will fill in any finer sand scratches. So this is good. This is ready for clear. So we're going to get this tape and papered up so we can actually now start on priming and base coating the bumper. All right, so tricky little repair here today because we're doing two different things at the same time, the headlights and the bumper. So I've got the headlights all prepped. Those are ready to be cleared, but I have to tape and paper them off because I'm getting ready now to start priming and base coating the bumper. So that's where I'm at right now. It's already been scuffed. Adhesion promoter has already been put on. And now I'm just going to start priming the areas, and I'm using a high build primer. I'll normally do 2 to 3 coats of primer. It just depends on what I see with my eyes. I'm just trying to fill in and level all sand scratches. I don't want to see any mapping. So I put on a coat of primer, I let it flash, I'll use my heat gun, and then I'll use my sanding sponge to sand it smooth, and then I'll clean it, do another coat, repeat that process for, like I said, 2 to 3 coats. All right, so one thing I did want to mention when you're scuffing your primer is that if you, again, you just don't want to see any mapping, you want to make sure that you've got coverage and all your sand scratches are filled in, and you can't see it on camera, but sometimes the primer can get like a little orange peely if you go a little too heavy. So you just want to make sure that you sand the primer like super smooth, because you cannot hide what you can see, okay? Base coat is not going to hide the orange peel effects. You just want to make sure that everything's nice and smooth before you start your base coat. All right, so we're taped and papered. We are scuffed. Wax and grease remover has been done again. And so I've blown everything off. And the last step here is I'm just going to tack off any like little lint nubs, dust, debris, or anything that's on the bumper with my tack cloth. And then I'm going to be ready for base coat. With base coat, I'm just going to start by getting coverage over my damaged prime areas. And with each successive layer of base coat, I'll just extend a little bit further out so that it blends nicely. And then with this bumper, since I'm clearing the whole thing, I'll probably just do a nice little drop coat of color over the entire thing to give it a nice uniform appearance. All right, we've got our base coat on, and I've blended it out with what I had left in the gun. And so now we're getting ready to clear coat. So it's 2 wet coats of clear essentially. and I use a clear coat that's designed for outdoor use. So by the time I get done doing my first coat of clear, I'm not really going to have to wait. So by the time I get done down there and I come back, I can start my second coat of clear straight away. All right, we are all done. Second coat of clear on, and headlights are cleared, and we've removed all the tape and paper. Came out great. Took me about 3.5 hours. The customer just left to go pick his wife up to go take her to a chiropractic appointment, which is the cool thing about all of this, right? Saves them time, saves them money. So I'm just going to send him the invoice via email, and there's a payment link on there. He's just going to click the payment link and he's going to pay. And most of the time, customers typically leave at least a 10% tip. If you're watching this thinking, man, I would love to learn how to make money doing that, then don't miss this next video right here where I break down exactly how to start your own mobile auto body and paint business from scratch.